Welcome to the latest episode of Etihad Cargo Connections. I'm your host, Rowan Anderson, and I'm joined by the multiple group-winning trainer, Jamie Osborne. How are you tonight, Jamie?
That's stretching the definition. We have had a Group 1 winner, but sadly only one. But I'm good, thanks.
Well, welcome to the conversation. We're going to start from the beginning. Just where you were born, where you grew up, and how you got into the sport.
God, I grew up on a farm in Yorkshire, so the north of England. Yep. And in my gap year, I ended up coming to Lambourn to work for Nicky Henderson in the hope of becoming a national hunt jockey. Thankfully, that did happen. And then I retired from that in 2000, and I've been training horses here in Lambourn ever since.
And what was it about horses and horse racing that got your passion?
I was small and stupid. I couldn't do anything else.
That's a good response. That's awesome. I talk to a lot of jockeys and a lot of trainers, and everyone has a different response. So that's great.
No, I'd grown up with horses as a child.
Yeah.
And national hunt racing especially had sort of grabbed my attention from the age of 12. And I thought I quite like the idea of having a go at that. You never quite know what that actually entails until you're involved in it. But thankfully it went quite well and I really enjoyed it. And then sort of when that was coming to an end, I didn't really feel I could leave the sport. I had a real passion for the sport and I wanted to point in a slightly different direction. So rather than going down the route that everyone expected me to do, which was to become a national hunt trainer, I decided that I would give the flat racing a go.
And is there anyone else in the family or in the past that's been involved in the industry, or you're the first one?
No. My mother used to show jump to quite a high level. So horses were always around, but there was no racing connection at all.
And we'll just go back to you mentioned you began as a jockey and went on to a trainer. I was on your website and I saw a great quote. It said you describe yourself as an overrated jockey and an underrated trainer. How would you describe your career as a jockey, and what were your highlights in terms of in the saddle?
Well, I think arguably you could say I achieved more as a jockey than I have yet as a trainer.
Okay.
As a jockey, you've got you've got a time scale. It's not something you can do when you're my age.
Yeah.
So I still feel that I've got time to achieve more as a flat trainer.
Yeah.
I suppose, I rode a lot of Cheltenham festivals. I think I rode 12 Cheltenham festival winners in the 90s. I was never champion jockey, but I was runner-up in the championship a couple of times. I think the best season riding was 130 something winners, okay. which at the time, here through a winter, that's quite a lot of winners. And that would have made me champion jockey in many of the years previously, but sadly it didn't that year. We've never reached that number of heights, that number of winners as a trainer yet. I think the best season we had was 60 something. We've had we've never been massive. We train sort of 60 70 horses, and we just try and train them well and try and compete. But this game is ever changing, and some of the big yards now would have 250 horses plus. So we are what would be considered to be a sort of small to medium size operation.
And you rode for, was it 16 seasons?
Something like that. Enough to sort of leave me carrying a few old injuries.
Yeah, for sure. And you got your training license in 1999?
Oh, was it? I thought it was 2000. Maybe it was 99. So I think it was the autumn of 99. That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
So the first full season was 2000.
Yeah, excellent. And so in 2001, you trained your first Ascot winner with Irony in the Windsor Castle Stakes, and then you went on with Milk It and Mick for the Group 1 Dewhurst Stakes. What have been some of your highlights of your training career outside of that so far?
Well, obviously, 3 years in, we've had a Royal Ascot winner and won a Dewhurst. So I was
Yeah,
thinking it might be a bit easy this game, but
yeah,
as ever, when you think that, you realise that it's not.
yeah,
We've had a steady flow since then. I think probably Toast of New York winning the UAE Derby in 2014, and then he went on that year to be beaten a nose in the Breeders' Cup Classic. He's been the highlight since. But we've had 6 Royal Ascot winners. We had a very good staying horse called Geordieland, who was second in 2 Ascot Gold Cups behind Yates.
yeah.
Um, the last handful of years, I would say, we've lacked a star. We've lacked a very big horse. But we're ever hopeful that the next one is just around the corner.
Yeah. And what was it, getting your license in, as you said, 2000 being the first actual full season? What was when was the decision? What like promoted the decision to turn your hand to training rather than, getting out of the saddle?
Well, when I finished, basically, my body wasn't really very capable of continuing. I'd had
Yeah.
a couple of bad injuries. I'd had a very badly broken wrist the year before, and I'd lost a lot of the feeling. Some of the nerves in that hand
Yes.
were a bit malfunctioning
Yeah.
and star. And it was getting increasingly difficult to ride carrying that. And I
Yeah.
think you get to the point, I think nowadays the jump jockeys, they understand their injuries much better than we did. And we were pretty much each man for himself. We didn't have a support team now like they do now. And so I think the jump jockeys' careers were a bit shorter.
Yeah.
Um, I think, if I was riding in a different era, maybe I could have gone on a bit longer, but my body had about had enough by the time I packed up.
Yeah, yeah, mate. So you've had, as you mentioned, Toast of New York a moment ago, winning that UAE Derby in 2014. What has been your experience racing in the UAE so far as a trainer?
Oh, I love coming to the UAE.
Yeah,
You can see, I mean, every year we try and bring horses for the carnival, and we hope that we might have something good enough for World Cup night.
yeah,
I think it's amazing. It's for us in the middle of a fairly, English weather in the winter can be quite depressing. To be able to sort of come to the Middle East and to go somewhere where drink well, the facilities are fantastic, the prize money, and I think especially for UK clients, if you gave them the choice of, do you want to run here at Wolverhampton or do you want to go to Meydan? I don't think that's I don't think that's too hard a decision.
yeah,
So all my clients really enjoy coming to the UAE. I enjoy coming to the UAE,
yeah,
and I think that the racing at Meydan, it's a great spectacle. It's competitive racing, as we know, but it's not impossible to succeed there if you bring the right horse.
yeah. And how many carnivals or how long have you been bringing horses to the UAE?
Oh, a long time,
A long
a
time.
long time.
Okay.
Yeah, a
Yeah,
long time. I would say probably for the last 15 years,
yeah, that's excellent.
at least.
Yeah,
No, probably. Yeah, I would say about that. Since the
and
start of Meydan.
at the start of Meydan, yeah. And you had New York City race on Friday night at Meydan. Tell us a little bit about that, Colt.
Yeah, he was a bit slovenly on Friday.
Yeah.
It's his first run for us. I'd suspected that the fast 5 furlongs there was going to be a little bit sharp for him.
Okay.
But I wanted to get a run into him just to learn a little bit about him, and we did that. And while he didn't run, look, he didn't figure, but the race on the 27th, the 6 furlong rated stakes there, I think he's going to suit him much better.
Yeah.
And we learned a bit about him on Friday, so I would expect and hope that he'll get competitive during his time in Dubai. Friday was really just a little bit of a sighter to point us in the right direction, and clearly on that track, 6 furlongs is going to suit him much better.
Yeah. So that was the first start for him with the stable.
Sorry?
Was that his first start with the stable? Was it?
Yeah, that was his first
Yeah.
start for us.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was his first. That was his first start for us.
Yeah. And how many have you actually brought to the UAE to race for this season?
We 3. So Ouzo, who hopefully will run on Friday in the 90 to 100 mile handicap.
Yeah.
And another sprinter called Hierarchy, who will run the following Friday. He's rated 100, so he'll run as top weight in the 5 furlong 90 to 100 there.
Okay. And so with the experience you have over there, what have you seen in terms of the development of the actual profile of racing in the UAE in the Middle East?
Well, it's ever evolving, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think, His Highness Sheikh Mohammed has set his stall out to create something there, and he's created it. Yeah. It's, as I said, everybody enjoys going there, and we get very well looked after. Yeah. Obviously, the hope with a carnival horse, although this year I don't know, but the hope with a carnival horse is that they can progress through the duration of the carnival and book themselves a ticket for World Cup night, which, in my mind, is one of the great sporting events in the calendar. It's a phenomenal atmosphere, and it's a great experience for anybody that owns a horse to have a horse there.
Yeah, most definitely. And so you mentioned before you had did you say 60 in the stable currently?
About that, yeah.
About that. And the 3 that are in the UAE now, they've all arrived in Dubai?
Yeah. Yep. So they all fly in. All the international carnival horses came on the same plane out of Stansted on the 28th December. There were 62 horses on that flight.
Okay.
So it's a big old operation. So they've all landed in, and they're all training in the quarantine barns. They're just sort of half a mile from the track. So a great facility. So I have my right-hand man, Jimmy McCarthy, out there overseeing the whole thing, and I'll just nip in and out for race days.
That's excellent. And so how the trio, I'm assuming, traveled fairly well and settled it fairly well as well?
Yeah. So, I'm hoping that Ouzo can be competitive on Friday. And I think Hierarchy can certainly be competitive the week after. And then the paths that they take from here will really depend on how they get on in their first races. But there's a good program for all 3 horses there that they can hopefully all be busy while they're there in the UAE.
And so in terms of planning, as you said, for their program, do you just set out that you've got them penciled in for those initial races, and then you basically progress depending on how they perform?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of planning goes into, building a team of suitable horses to come to the carnival. Obviously, there's no point bringing a horse where there aren't sufficient races for him.
Yeah.
So with racing once a week, the UAE has to cater for as many of the different types of horses as they can. But there are some horses where there aren't enough races, so we don't bring them. So obviously with the 2 sprinters, there's enough opportunities for them, and for Ouzo, there's enough opportunities for him. But yeah, a lot of planning goes into it. Building a little squad to come out there is very much on my mind from the middle of the summer. And we were intending to bring more than 3, but it just didn't quite work out. We had a couple of horses that we were nearly bringing, and then we thought potentially that it wasn't going to suit them as well as I'd hoped it was going to. So, carnival horses are not easy things to find because, as it's very competitive racing. There's no point coming here with a badly handicapped horse. You have to feel there's a bit of juice left in his handicap mark. And obviously they have to be able to go on pretty fast ground. They have to be able to train on the track. They have to have the right mentality to train on the track and live in that environment. So, that not all horses tick the boxes that mean they're suitable to travel.
Yeah, most definitely. And so you mentioned also that you don't have a specific star of the stable. Are there any horses that are either up and coming or, out of those 3 that race fans should keep an eye
on? Well, Ouzo's rated 92, which makes him a little bit vulnerable to be on a ballot next week, which is why I'm not saying he's definitely running next Friday. But I think he's a very well handicapped 92. I think he's a horse that can really succeed there if he gets into the right races. And Hierarchy, I feel he's 100 rated horse, and I think he can progress from there. So I think, we haven't brought horses out there thinking that they can't succeed. Now, whether they do or not is another thing. But, I can make a case for all 3 of these horses having successful campaigns in Dubai.
Yep. And any of the other from the other 60, as you said, in the stable that are other up and coming? I'm
Well,
not
we
asking
hope
for
so.
a tip. I'm just asking.
Look, we hope so. Obviously, we're getting the 2-year-olds going.
Yeah.
We've got 20 2-year-olds for this year.
Yeah.
So I don't know an awful lot about them yet. They're just going through the process of development, and I'm ever hopeful, like I am every year, that there's a star amongst them. And maybe some of the 3-year-olds that we've got in the yard. I don't think there's any real superstars. But there's plenty of horses that are going to win races, hopefully.
Yeah, most definitely. And we'll just talk about your training career as well. You said that a racehorse trainer is only as good as the people you work with. Building the right team is the key to success. How important is it, whether it be people that work around the stable or the team you have, or your daughter who stars as one of your jockeys, riding for the stable? How important is it to have the right team around you?
Well, a racehorse trainer, it's not a one-man job.
Yeah, of course.
You have to build a team of people around you that know what they're doing, and are an asset to the business. Staffy, my daughter, now joining in, is a whole new dimension. We've turned it now almost, it's a family business now, because she's very involved. She's been through her apprentice couple of years, and I think she's improved as time's gone on. And now that she's no longer claiming, I have no worries about putting her on the horses. I think she's a very safe pair of hands. I think she's progressed enormously this year, and working with her, while at times it's a little testing, I actually really enjoy it. The rest of my family, my wife's an artist, and she's never really been involved in the business. I have 3 sons who are somehow over 6 foot, and were never going to be jockeys, and they never really showed any inclination to be involved at all. I mean, there was a brief moment when they were teenagers when they came racing with me a little bit, because they thought it was about drinking, gambling, and girls. But once they realized there was a bit more to it than that, then they lost interest again. So Safi, being the youngest, she was always the one that was sort of really interested in it. She rode to a high level in eventing. She won a European gold medal on her pony when she was 15. She then went back to European Championships on a horse the following year, and I think she won a silver medal. So she potentially could have had a career in eventing. But racing, I think, was always her first love, and thankfully, she decided that she would put all her eggs into the racing basket, and it's working out well. And I think Safi, regardless of us, Safi has got a chance to really make it as a jockey. I think she's turning out to be pretty good at it.
I was going. One of my original questions was how important is it to make it a family business for yourself. So that was one of the initial questions. So interesting. My wife and I are actually expecting our first child in 3 days. So it's
well. I hope for your sake it's a boy.
Oh, we're having a little girl.
Oh, bad luck. My experience, the boys have been a lot easier than the girl.
And so you mentioned as well, when you first got into training, and within those 3 years you had those major wins, but then you also said you thought it would be it'd be an easy gig when you first got in based on those wins. What are some other lessons you've learned along the way, and going on 23 years in training?
God, is it that long? I think that you've got to have the horses, and the hardest part, I think, for any trainer is sourcing good animals. And the training of them, the managing of their careers, I think becomes, I won't say straightforward, but with experience, you kind of instinctively what to do. Experience tells you what to do. Finding the very good horses is, and getting them into the yard. That is the hardest part. So you need, realistically, for that, you need plenty of spending power, abnormal amount of luck. You know, I mean, you need luck too when you got the spending power. But if you don't have the spending power, then you know the chances of finding a Group 1 horse really is fairly slim.
Yeah, and one of my last questions is something else. Another quote of yours that I saw about owning a racehorse, how not only enhance your bank balance, but the experience will always enhance your life. How important to you, to the stable as well as the owners, are things like syndication and horse ownership?
Well, look, what we try and make sure here is that everybody enjoys it. You know, if you're not winning decent pots, you know, this is quite an expensive hobby, you know, for people. So we have to make sure that everybody is well looked after and everybody is getting out of it. So I think the whole experience line journey, it's a bit white knuckle, and there will be peaks and there will be troughs, and how we manage the animals. And you know, I don't encourage anyone necessarily to get married to their animal. I think that if you're going to stay in this game and it's not going to cost you a fortune, you need to have a bit of agility. You have to be prepared to trade when the opportunity arrives, and keep shuffling the pack, because you know the more cards you get hold of, the more chance you've got of getting the ace of spades.
I actually just bought into my first racehorse last month as well. So
you're having a baby and you've got a racehorse.
I'm based in Australia. So one of my friends is a local trainer in the state I live in. So he does pretty well of the gig. So
we don't really have the same setup here in the UK as you do in Australia with the syndicate. I think, you know, there are some very successful syndicate operations here in the UK. I mean, primarily we don't, I think, because we just don't have the level of prize money that you have. I mean, I think the Australian model is something that we look upon with envy. You know, our model is very different. And, you know, I think you have a real shot, haven't you, in a syndicate in Australia of actually, A, having a lot of fun, and B, getting some money. You know, here that is less likely. We can give you the fun.
That's it. And so the final question I had, just going back to Dubai and those side of things as well, you mentioned World Cup, a win in a race on World Cup night is, you know, the pinnacle. But what are some other races you really would love to win at home as well as in the Middle East?
Well, obviously, you know, the Saudi Cup meeting, the prize money there makes that very attractive. I don't have a horse to go there this year, sadly.
Have you been to Saudi and Qatar before?
We were second in the long race the first year of the Saudi Cup, and the horse won $500,000 for finishing second, which was just completely abnormal.
What horse was that?
Horse called Mekong.
Okay.
So, you know, we'd dearly love to have horses that could chase those prizes, but anywhere where people can have a great experience around the world and we can find a horse that can be competitive out there, we'll probably chase it. Domestically, we put quite a lot of emphasis on Royal Ascot because everybody enjoys it. It's a fantastic week, great spectacle, great racing. Nobody's doing that for the prize money. They're doing that for the experience. And having a Royal Ascot winner, I think, you know, they're very hard to come by. You need a lot of planning and a bit of luck. But that is very much on our, or from this point now in the year to June, you know, you're thinking back from Royal Ascot with a lot of horses.
Yeah, most definitely. Thanks so much for joining us tonight on Etihad Cargo Connections, Jamie. It's been amazing.
Okay, Ron. Pleasure.
Thanks, Jamie. Bye.